I managed to get into many away ends over the years, early 70s to mid 80s, always a great feeling to take them. I think our mob specialised in taking ends, whereas the other big firms, like West Ham's ICF and Millwall Bushwackers, didn't always use that tactic. I think that's why most people from the 70s remember the match against Chelsea as being so memorable, because Chelsea tried to take their end. Anyway, that's my theory. So, here's my memory of the ends I have been in alphabetical order. Arsenal, North Bank, 76-77. An evening League Cup match. A fair-sized mob of us got in there and stayed the whole game, standing to the right as you look at the pitch. Great scrap outside too, when the rest of the Chelsea joined us from the clock end. The following season, 77-78, we took it again with an even bigger mob on Boxing Day. Excellent day out all round, apart from the result, 0-3. Aston Villa 79, Holt End. About 300 of us managed to get into the Holt End about half an hour before kick-off. When the Chelsea roar went up, they scattered. We totally cleared the Holt End. It was too easy and quite surprising really. I was expecting more from the great big Holt End boys. Bolton, Lever End. We went in there a few times, most memorably by a wholesale charge across the pitch by our entire mob in 76. Caught them in a pincer movement and took their end. I always liked Burnden Park, a big old-fashioned ground, but their mob was rubbish. Brighton, not sure what their end was called, FA Cup game in 72-73. I was with the main Chelsea mob along the halfway line. Think it was all ticket that day, but a few Chelsea were in the Brighton end. It kicked off in there during the first half, and at half-time loads of us charged across the pitch to help out the Chelsea boys. Needless to say, Brighton bottled it. Cardiff, Bob Bank, took this at least once, but Cardiff had a few hard boys and it was never easy. At least 2 memorable days out at Ninian Park for Chelsea boys. Coventry 70s, West Stand, West Bank. Never rated Coventry, and every time I went there we took their end. Crystal Palace, Holmesdale End, not sure why, but we always seemed to go in the other end, Whitehorse, but we'd always give a cheer as we watched about half a dozen Chelsea clearing the Palace out of the Holmesdale. Total tossers, even worse than QPR and Fulham, as Palace were gobby. Fulham, Hammersmith End, same as QPR, so easy. Ipswich, North Stand. Ipswich's mob were on a par with QPR, and therefore not worth talking about. We took their end many times. Leicester, Cop, took this end at least twice in the 70s, never rated Leicester as a mob. In 89 we took 10,000 there and took their end again just to prove that we could. Liverpool, Anfield, 1973. A legendary attempt at taking the Cop occurred during this match. I believe one of only 2 times anyone tried it, Man United the other. Around 500 of us got into the Cop and after being surrounded, stood our ground. The police arrive and surround us from the Cop boys until the end of the game. Luton, Oak Road End, too easy, bit like Watford. Took it every time we played them. I just don't get this. Luton is rough stuff, as never saw them ever. Manchester City, Kipax, 1984 it was. I remember us getting in the Kipax and giving an excellent account of ourselves. We normally took a decent-sized crew to City, who had a hard mob, always respected them. But that day they came unstuck. Even their own lads talk about it in their books. Chelsea held 3 sides of their ground that night. Middlesbrough, Holgate End, 1978. We turned up early and took their end before the Borough lads even got in the ground. When they turned up they tried everything to get us out, but we stayed put. Borough were another mob who liked to throw missiles, particularly darts. Then in 82 we went in late and scattered them all over the Holgate. Police turfed us out, but it was too easy. Nottingham Forest, Trent End. We got in the Trent End on a number of occasions. They had a decent mob and always put up a good fight. The best year was 1976 when we got into the Trent, and after vicious fighting, the police made the Forest stand in the away end and gave us the whole Trent End to ourselves. Forest were gutted. I can still hear the song, "We Took the Trent End, Nottingham." Orient, don't know their end, went to Brisbane Road 2 or 3 times in the 70s, but as Chelsea took over the whole ground I never did find out which was their end. Plymouth, Devonport End, not sure of the year, but we took their end easily enough in the mid-70s, actually, 76 I think it was. Then had a full-on battle with them outside afterwards. The ground was Ortcully in a park, home park. Portsmouth, Fratton End. Can't remember too much about my visits to Pompey, due to alcoholic intake en route, but I know we went in their end at least once. 75 rings a bell. They weren't happy, that's for sure. The 84 match was sheer carnage, all day and night. Police lost control. Fair play to the Pompey lads, gave as good as they got that night. QPR, the Loft. Total joke. We went in there mob-handed every time we played them, and not a QPR fan in sight. Sheffield United, Shoreham Road Cop, a special, full of us, about 600, went in the Cop in 72/73 and stayed the entire game, despite being bombarded with steel ball bearings, bricks, lumps of concrete, stones and darts. The police just stood there holding them back and laughing as we were hit with missiles over and again, but then, all Northern Coppers were total knobs back then. After the match we joined forces with the Chelsea lads who were up the other end, and had a ruck with the Sheffield lads on a building site on our way back to the station. The following season we got in their end again, and were reinforced by the Chelsea lads in the other end, who charged across the pitch to help us out. Southampton, Milton Road End. We always went in the Milton, usually took it, then got a police escort down the away end. One season 77 cup match. I particularly remember though. Southampton steamed us from behind and we ended up at the front of the terrace. The Chelsea fans around me didn't seem bothered, but I was incensed that we'd been steamed out of their end. After all, we were Chelsea. I totally lost it and steamed up the empty terrace and piled into the Southampton mob at the top. I gave a pretty good account of myself, but I was totally alone, as the Chelsea boys were still at the bottom watching, and laughing. In the end, in an unspoken agreement, me and the bloke I was currently fighting just stopped and shook hands, and I turned and went to join the Chelsea. The Southampton mob even gave me a round of applause for my efforts. I was totally pissed off that the rest of our mob didn't pile in, as it damaged our reputation, but as soon as I rejoined them we were all escorted up the other end, me with a split lip and my shirt collar ripped and sticking out the back of my jacket. Happy days. Stoke, Boothen End. My first time at Stoke we took a fair-sized mob into the Boothen and stayed there the whole match, think it was 72/73. I can still remember the Stoke fans bouncing up and down and singing, "We are the Potters" over and over again, really looked and sounded pathetic. We got ambushed on the way back to the station by a load of Stoke waiting for us in a graveyard, but we ran them easily enough. Went in the Boothen again at least a couple of times in the 70s, never really felt intimidated there. Sunderland, Fulwell End, 1975. 500 of us get into their end and they scattered. Reinforced by the police they come back at us, but we held our ground until the police moved us all out and into the away end with the other 3,000 Chelsea boys. Tottenham, Park Lane, Paxton Road End, went in the Park Lane but got moved out, early 70s. Then they changed their home end to the Paxton. Went in there a couple of times, kicked off big time, naturally. Can't remember us ever going on the shelf, don't know why. Watford, the Rookery. We didn't play them often but I remember us clearing the Rookery at least once, no big deal, even Fulham could have had a fair go at them. West Brom 70s, Smethwick End. West Brom never had a hard mob, and we got in their end quite a few times. Loved the Hawthorns back then, lovely ground. Then there were the away ends we didn't take, at least not in my experience. Birmingham, Spion Cop. The end was along the side of the pitch on a large covered terrace. My first time at St Andrews was in 72/73. The first Chelsea football special were put in the Tilton end behind the goal, but I was on the second special, and we managed to get onto the Spion Cop. A few hundred of us started walking towards their mob, but as soon as they sussed who we were they steamed down the terrace and I took a right kicking. I stayed in the end though, with a mate, but the rest of the Chelsea had either left or were practicing their Brummie accents. Big ruck at the station after the game, as some bright spark who worked in the fixtures department had arranged it that Man United would play at West Brom the same day. Mayhem. Blackpool, Cop. My first time at Bloomfield Road was in 76. We had a large mob there that day, but couldn't get in their end as it was the same as Norwich, only the railings were higher. Most memorable part of the day was when large numbers of Rangers and Celtic fans started fighting in our side. Bedlam, rampant Glaswegians trying to kill each other, Chelsea fans at the top of the railings swinging punches at Blackpool fans, the names of all four teams being chanted throughout the game. Great day out. Blackburn, was it called the Blackburn End? Maybe. My first trip to Ewood Park was only a few weeks after my first trip to Blackpool. So 1976 still. About 24 of us went up in a Ford Transit from South London, and found a nice little pub which sold thwaites bitter and sandwiches the size of breeze blocks. The police made us go in the away end, where we met up with the rest of the Chelsea. I've never gone in the Blackburn end for some reason, though I'm pretty sure they had a crap mob just well protected by the old Bill. Bristol Rovers, Tote End. I remember us trying to get into their end at Eastville near the end of a game in the mid-70s, and being surprised at how up for it they were. We went in again 1980 and stood our ground against a decent mob. Bristol City, East End, 1980. I know I've been to Ashton Gate more than once, but don't remember a thing about it damned beer. But my contacts tell me we took it in 1980. YouTube it and you will see the carnage. Burnley, Longside, another of those ends that runs alongside the length of the pitch. This was another Ford Transit journey, but me and my mate Doug, we were totally hammered. Somehow got separated from the rest of the Chelsea and so decided to go in the Burnley end to meet up with them again. However, me and Doug turned out to be the only two Chelsea fans in the Longside, as the rest of them were behind the goal to our left. We remained undetected until Doug went for a piss, then returned to inform all and sundry what he thought of the local facilities in a broad South London accent, upon which the two of us had to leg it up to the Chelsea end at a speed that would have made Usain Bolt look infirm. Derby, Popside, 1979-ish. One of those grounds where the away fans were separated from the home end by just a set of railings. In Derby's case the Popside was along the side of the pitch. We could have taken Derby easily on many occasions, but for some reason we always ended up the wrong side of the railings. Nearest we came was when they sang to us, "We'll fight you on the pitch," so we stormed onto the pitch. Surprise, surprise, Derby stayed put. They were a nasty little mob, liked to ambush away fans on the long trek back to the station, but usually picked on scarfers. Millwall, Cold Blow Lane, 76-77, a small mob of us got in the CBL. We were squashed up in the top corner, and our numbers fell as more and more Chelsea were either nicked or made a discreet exit. I stayed most of the game, but left near the end. Once I was out on the streets I wished I'd stayed in the CBL. Millwall nutters everywhere. Some of them were old dockers in their 50s and 60s. It would have been safer walking through Beirut with an "I Hate Arabs" t-shirt on, but I somehow made it home in one piece. Norwich, Berkeley End. Like Derby, we were separated from the Norwich boys by a set of railings. Norwich were one of those gobby mobs when they were safe behind the railings, but totally bottled it when there was no barrier. We always took a large mob to Norwich, sometimes loads of us trying to climb over the railings to get at them. I suspect one of the reasons we took such numbers to Norfolk was the reputation of the local girls. Easy doesn't describe them. I remember a whole line of us Chelsea lads shagging some Norwich bints at the back of the Berkeley, so glad I didn't catch anything nasty. Sheffield Wednesday, Cop, 72-73, FA Cup match at Hillsborough. A trainload of us made our way to the ground and tried to get into the Cop. I was one of the first through the turnstiles, and eventually about 20 of us made it in, but the Wednesday fans must have heard Chelsea singing outside, and turned up in large numbers by the turnstiles. Most of them seemed to be tooled up with large spanners, iron bars and the like, and they steamed straight into the 20 of us, giving us a good hiding. I'm not ashamed to say that we jumped back over the turnstiles to get away, as there was no other way out. We then had a small rock with the Chelsea lads who hadn't got in, as they were giving it large about us bottling it, and we were asking why they took so bleeding long to get in. Pretty obvious really, they saw what was happening to us inside, and didn't fancy it. So, I'd entered the ground and exited again, fought against some mouthy Chelsea lads, took a kicking from the Wednesday boys before we even got on the Cop terracing, all within about 10 minutes. Revenge was sweet though. After watching the game from the Leppings Lane end, the Chelsea fans mobbed up and stayed together outside, which was pretty unusual back then. As we walked up a hill towards the station, we saw a large mob of Wednesday and steamed into them. I'd still be kicking the shit out them even now, if it hadn't been for some Chelsea fans pulling me away. Wolves, South Bank. Tough mob in the 70s when they started going in the South Bank. I remember the 76-77 game which we were banned from, but we took a huge mob up there anyway and the police had to put us in the South Bank to keep us off the streets. Big ruck at half-time in the bar, then another on the pitch afterwards. Thanks to the police for that one. Both sets of fans were celebrating promotion together before the old Bill stepped in for no good reason. It was carnage outside, and fair play to them, they had a right good go at us. We also went into their North Bank in '78, but their firm was in the South Bank so didn't really count in my book. I don't know why we went into the North Bank. Some Chelsea still thought their mob went in there, even though they were right next to us in the South Bank. We just walked in when some numpty opened the gates at the back with 15 minutes to go. Some bad casualties as they tried to get away, crush injuries and all that. God, did they bottle it. Then again, it was old guys and kids against the might of the Chelsea mob. West Ham, North Bank, South Bank. Chelsea rarely took a decent mob to Upton Park back in those days, probably because the Mile End boys took the shed on a regular basis when they came to the bridge. A small mob of us occasionally ventured into the North Bank, but was so outnumbered that we'd end up in the South Bank, which was nearly as bad. Not a nice place to go back then. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe for more videos and to help our channel grow.